Welcome to the Deep Dive. We sift through dense stacks of info research, articles, you name it, and pull out the core insights. Basically a shortcut to getting you properly informed.
Yeah, cutting through the noise.
Exactly. So today, we're diving deep into how everything in your health is connected, using a really great conversation between Andrew Huberman and Dr. Mark Hyman as our guide.
Dr. Hyman's journey is pretty fascinating, actually. Started in Asian studies, then had this major health crash in Beijing from mercury exposure.
Wow, really? Mercury?
Yeah. Led to serious gut problems, brain fog, autoimmune stuff, and that whole experience pushed him towards functional medicine via Jeff Bland.
Oh, Jeff Bland. Wasn't he a student of Linus Pauling?
That's the one. So quite a background. And it really shaped his view because, conventional medicine wasn't giving him the answers he needed.
Right, and that's a big part of this, isn't it? The standard approach often feels fragmented. Like, you see one specialist for migraines.
Another for IBS, another for a skin rash. Each looks at their little piece.
Yeah, like the body's just a collection of parts that don't talk to each other.
Exactly. Functional medicine flips that. It sees the body as this integrated network, an ecosystem, really, where everything affects everything else.
So it's less about the specific symptom and more about the underlying system.
Precisely. Dr. Hyman calls it the operating system, not just the apps. The idea is those seemingly separate problems, the migraines, the gut issues, the rash, might actually stem from the same root imbalance.
It's interesting how some of these ideas, which maybe seemed out there before, are becoming more mainstream now. Things like leaky gut.
Oh, absolutely. Or chronic fatigue syndrome. These were once, kind of dismissed by some.
Right. Fringe ideas.
Yeah. But now you've got major players like Stanford and Harvard with departments looking into things like metabolic psychiatry.
Metabolic psychiatry, what's that link?
It's exploring that powerful connection between how our body processes energy, our metabolism, and our mental health. It shows a growing recognition that these connections are real and biologically significant.
Which kind of gets to the core philosophy then. It's not just about fixing diseases when they pop up.
No, not at all. Dr. Hyman talks about it as the science of creating health.
Creating health, I like that.
The principle is, if you optimize those fundamental body systems, your gut, immune system, energy production in your mitochondria, detox pathways, hormones.
The core building blocks.
Exactly. Then often the symptoms people are struggling with just resolve, kind of as a side effect of the body getting back into balance. So you're building health, not just fighting sickness.
Okay, that sounds good in theory, this science of creating health.
Yeah.
But practically speaking, where does someone even start with that?
Well, Dr. Hyman boiled it down to two key questions to ask yourself. First, what am I exposed to that's messing up my normal function?
Okay, like negative inputs.
Yeah. And second, what are the essential ingredients my body actually needs to work properly? Those are the starting points.
And that brings in this idea of the exposome, doesn't it? It's bigger than just what we eat.
Totally. The exposome is the sum total of everything. The negatives, like you said, toxins, infections, allergens, junk food, stress. But also the positives, the things your body needs. Good food, nutrients, light, water, air, movement, rest, connection, love, even meaning and purpose.
And the big takeaway is that this whole picture, the exposome, is actually more important than our genes.
That's what he argues, yeah. More predictive of your health outcomes than your genetic blueprint, which is, pretty empowering when you think about it.
It really is. It suggests we have more levers to pull than maybe we thought. So let's unpack those ingredients for health. What are the absolute basics?
Food is foundational. Michael Pollan's advice is still gold. Eat food, mostly plants, not too much.
Simple, but hard to argue with.
Right. And eat food grown on a plant, not made in a plant. It boils down to whole, unprocessed foods, lots of colorful fruits and vegetables, quality protein, healthy fats. That's your fuel.
And it's about more than just macros, right? It's the vitamins, minerals.
Oh, definitely. Micronutrients are crucial. Dr. Hyman brings up Bruce Ames's work, how these vitamins and minerals act as cofactors for enzymes.
Cofactors, like spark plugs for reactions.
Kind of, yeah. They help the enzymes do their jobs. And a huge chunk of our DNA codes for these enzymes. Without the right cofactors, things just don't run efficiently.
And we all need different amounts.
Exactly. Huge individual variability based on genetics and biochemistry. What's enough for me might not be enough for you. Plus, you've got conditionally essential nutrients like CoQ10. Our bodies make it, but maybe not always enough, especially as we age.
Okay, so food is number one. What else is on that ingredients list?
Right, beyond food. Getting some sunlight, drinking enough clean water, breathing clean air, easier said than done, sometimes moving your body regularly, getting good sleep.
The lifestyle stuff.
Yeah, and the less tangible things too. Social
Mhm.
connection, love, and having that sense of meaning or purpose. He mentioned a JAMA study linking purpose to like 7 extra years of life.
7 years. Wow.
Yeah, and even stuff like positive anticipation, reducing how much sleep you need. It shows how interconnected it all is. Biology, lifestyle, even mindset.
Okay, so getting those ingredients is key. But you mentioned issues with modern food making that harder. What's going on there?
Well, the Industrial Revolution, urbanization, it totally changed our diet compared to, say, hunter-gatherers. Dr. Hyman spent time with the Hadza tribe in Africa.
Oh, yeah.
And their diet is incredibly diverse. They eat something like 800 different plants. Think about the range of nutrients and phytochemicals they're getting.
Compared to our, what, like a dozen main crops?
Pretty much. And often heavily processed versions of those. We've lost that diversity.
And it's not just variety, right? The food itself has
Yeah.
less stuff in it.
Exactly. Industrial farming has really depleted the soil's organic matter and minerals.
So the soil is less healthy.
Yeah, which means the plants grown in it absorb fewer nutrients. So that carrot you eat today might have significantly less magnesium or zinc than a carrot from, say, 50 years ago.
And we see that lack reflected in population health data.
Absolutely. Look at the NAANES data, the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. It consistently shows widespread low levels of key nutrients in Americans.
Like what?
Things like omega-3s, vitamin D, magnesium, iron, zinc, selenium. These aren't rare deficiencies. They're pretty common across the board.
Okay, so if the food isn't always cutting it, does that mean supplements are basically necessary for most people?
Mm-hmm.
What's Dr. Hyman's take?
Given those widespread low levels, he does suggest a basic foundation for most adults.
Like what specifically?
Generally, omega-3 fats aiming for maybe 2 to 4 grams of EPDHA combined per day, vitamin D3, usually 2,000 to 4,000 IUs, and a good quality multivitamin.
A multi-8. But aren't those all kind of the same?
Not really. The form of the nutrients matters hugely. Take magnesium, for example. Magnesium oxide is cheap and common, but your body barely absorbs it.
Ah, okay.
You want forms like citrate, malate, glycinate, threonate. Those are much more bioavailable. He saw this difference firsthand in hospital patients.
So bioavailability is key.
Oh.
What about that argument you sometimes hear, supplements just give you extensive urine?
Yeah, he pushes back on that. It's an oversimplification. Sure, your body excretes excess water-soluble vitamins, but it absorbs what it needs first.
Right.
And that argument completely ignores the reality of why people might need them in the first place. The depleted soils, the processed foods. Getting everything from food alone is a real challenge today for many.
Are there any particular nutrients people might be overlooking?
Iodine is one he mentioned. With the shift away from iodized table salt towards sea salt or Himalayan salt.
Which aren't usually iodized.
Exactly. So iodine deficiency is kind of creeping back. Good sources are things like seaweed and fish. He also touched on methylated B vitamins, like B12.
Methylated?
Yeah, some people don't process standard B vitamins well due to their genetics. Methylated forms are already active, but understanding your own genetics, your methylation pathways, helps personalize that. It's not a one-size-fits-all.
So it sounds like a sensible baseline approach, but with an eye on individual needs and quality. Let's zoom out, though. What about the bigger picture? The food industry, government policies. Dr. Hyman seems to think they play a massive role.
Oh, absolutely. He traces a lot of it back to after World War II. Factories that made things like nitrogen for bombs got repurposed to make fertilizers for industrial agriculture. And things developed for biological warfare became pesticides. That really set the stage for mass food production.
And then came the push for convenience.
Exactly. The 50s onwards, you see the rise of highly processed packaged foods. Betty Crocker, TV dinners. It was marketed heavily.
And that changed how people ate.
Fundamentally, it disconnected people from cooking, from whole ingredients, created a reliance on these often less nutritious, convenient options.
He mentioned the true cost of cheap junk food. It's more than just calories, right?
Way more. He referenced a big Rockefeller report detailing the huge health costs, but also economic, environmental, and social costs of our current food system.
And there's a disconnect with government spending.
Huge disconnect. Spending fortunes on healthcare for chronic diseases while food policies often subsidize the very things contributing to those diseases. It's paradoxical.
How does that compare to, say, Europe?
He points out Europe often has much stricter rules on GMOs, glyphosate, that common herbicide, high fructose corn syrup, various additives. They tend to use the precautionary principle, meaning manufacturers have to prove something is safe before it goes in food. Here in the U.S., we often rely on the generally recognized as safe or GRAS loophole.
Which sounds okay, but...
But it has historically allowed things, like Crisco with its trans fats, to stay on the market for decades even when harm was known. The burden of proof is different.
And the food industry itself wields a lot of influence.
Immense influence. Through lobbying, funding research that suits their narrative sometimes, through groups that sound independent but aren't.
Like front groups.
Essentially, yeah. And even creating fake grassroots campaigns to fight things like soda taxes. He also mentioned big companies buying up smaller, healthier brands.
Oh yeah, like Primal Kitchen or U-Chocolate.
Right. And the concern is, will they eventually tweak the recipes to cut costs, sacrificing quality for profit? It's a valid concern. Ultimately, a handful of giant corporations control a huge amount of the food system.
From seed to supermarket shelf.
Pretty much. So he argues for way more transparency, clear labeling, like the warning labels in some South American countries, and better education so people can actually make informed choices, unlike the confusing labels we often have here.
It's definitely a complex web. Okay, let's shift to something getting a ton of attention lately. GLP-1 agonists. Ozempic, Wegovy. What's the functional medicine take on these?
Well, the science started with the Gila monster, believe it or not. A peptide it produces helps regulate hunger.
Huh.
So these drugs mimic our natural GLP-1 hormone, telling the brain we're full and slowing down digestion. They work.
They definitely seem effective for weight loss for many. But are there downsides or concerns from this perspective?
Yes, several. While acknowledging they can help, potential issues include losing muscle mass along with fat, which isn't ideal.
Right. You want to preserve muscle.
Oh, definitely. And then there are side effects. Nausea, vomiting are common, but also more serious risks like bowel obstruction, pancreatitis, potential thyroid, and kidney issues. Long-term use seems to increase the risk of some of those gut issues.
So it's not necessarily a magic bullet?
Not really. From a functional medicine view, you'd want to address why someone has metabolic issues or appetite dysregulation in the first place, ideally using lifestyle first. If these drugs are used, they absolutely need to be combined with nutrition guidance and exercise support.
What about people getting these peptides online, maybe cheaper versions?
He advises extreme caution there. Quality control, purity, proper dosing, it's all uncertain. It really should only be done under a doctor's supervision who knows what they're doing. He also made the point that he sees many patients lose significant weight and get their appetite under control just using food as medicine without these drugs.
Which brings us back to that food as medicine idea. It sounds powerful.
It really is. The idea is that different foods contain compounds that act almost like drugs in the body.
You give an example.
A big one is the ketogenic diet. Very low carb, high fat. It's showing amazing potential for mental health conditions, schizophrenia, autism, Alzheimer's, bipolar, depression, anxiety.
How does that work?
It dramatically changes brain metabolism, how the brain uses fuel, and impacts mitochondrial function. Major institutions like Mayo Clinic and Stanford are researching this. He even touched on keto for cancer, the idea being that many cancers rely heavily on glucose, so starving them of that might help.
Interesting, but not a cure-all.
No, definitely not presented as a universal cure, but as a potential metabolic therapy to use alongside standard oncology care in some cases. Research is ongoing.
It really shows how targeted nutrition can be. Okay, switching back to tracking our health blood markers.
Yeah.
You mentioned moving beyond basic cholesterol.
Yeah, the focus is shifting. It's not just total cholesterol or even just LDL and HDL anymore. We need to look deeper.
Things like
ApoB, apolipoprotein B. That tells you the number of potentially harmful lipoprotein particles, also LDL particle number and size. Small, dense LDL particles are considered more dangerous.
And what drives those numbers in the wrong direction?
Insulin resistance is a huge factor, usually from diets high in sugar and refined carbs. It tends to lower the good HDL, raise triglycerides, increase ApoB, and make more of those small, dense LDL particles.
So ApoB is a better marker than just LDL cholesterol?
Increasingly, yes. Even the American Heart Association recognizes ApoB as a strong predictor of heart attack risk. It gives a clearer picture.
And again, it's not one-size-fits-all with diet, is it? Even for heart health markers.
Absolutely not. He gave great examples. A ketogenic diet might dramatically improve the lipids of someone overweight and pre-diabetic,
Uh-huh.
but put a lean, healthy athlete on the same diet, and sometimes their LDL cholesterol might actually go up. These are the lean mass hyper-responders.
So you really need to see how your body responds.
Exactly. It emphasizes N of 1 research tracking yourself. Test, don't guess. See how your biomarkers change with diet shifts. Lipids can change pretty fast, maybe within a month.
And other things take longer.
Yeah, things like vitamin D or iron levels take more time to shift. He mentioned his 10-day detox diet often shows rapid changes in markers, though, showing the body can respond quickly.
Okay, another area often overlooked, toxins, especially heavy metals. Dr. Hyman had personal experience here, right?
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
That mercury poisoning in Beijing really focused his attention on environmental exposures.
So should we all be testing for heavy metals?
He suggests considering it, especially if you have known exposures or persistent unexplained symptoms. Reducing exposure is key too, filtering your water, ideally with reverse osmosis, being mindful of air quality.
And diet-wise. Mercury in fish is a common concern.
It is. Big predatory fish like tuna tend to accumulate more mercury. He suggests smaller fish. He called them smashers, like sardines, mackerel, anchovies, salmon, herring. He also mentioned a source called Seatopia.fish that focuses on regenerative aquaculture and lower mercury levels.
What about supporting our body's own detox systems?
Yeah, you can upregulate those pathways. Eating lots of cruciferous veggies, broccoli, kale, cauliflower helps because they contain sulforaphane, which boosts glutathione.
Glutathione, the master antioxidant.
That's the one. Garlic is good too, even cilantro juice apparently. And fiber is critical. It helps bind toxins in the gut so you can eliminate them.
What about those popular gut cleanses?
He advises caution. They can sometimes mess up your gut microbiome balance. It's different from, say, medically supervised gut purging for specific conditions like hepatic encephalopathy.
Are there nutrients that specifically support detoxification?
Yes. Things like N-acetylcysteine, NAC, lipoic acid, the methylating B vitamins B12, folate, B6, and adequate protein are all important for different detox pathways. His own protocol uses things like silica and alginates, but notably not charcoal for heavy metals typically.
Got it. Okay, let's talk hormones, another area deeply affected by diet and lifestyle.
Hugely. High sugar, high starch diets wreak havoc on hormones in both men and women.
Like PCOS in women.
Yeah, that's a big one. And in men, it's a major contributor to the really worrying trend of low testosterone, even in young guys.
So what's the advice for young men with low T-jump on TRT?
He strongly discourages that as a first step. Optimize diet, lifestyle, sleep, stress, targeted supplements first. Because TRT can shut down natural production and impact fertility.
Unless you add other things.
Right, like HCG. He mentioned Huberman started TRT later, around 45, and froze sperm beforehand. It's a serious consideration.
And beyond diet, what else impacts hormones?
Endocrine-disrupting chemicals are a big concern. Heavy metals, pesticides, these xenobiotics can interfere with our hormone systems, impacting fertility and reproductive health. He mentioned Dr. Shanna Swan's work showing declining sperm counts.
So testing is important here too.
Definitely. Regular hormone panels, sex hormones, DHEA sulfate. He sees concerning trends in articulation data through platforms like Function Health.
Okay, moving towards the cutting edge now. Peptides. What exactly are they?
Think of them as small proteins or signaling molecules. They're like the body's text messages carrying information and instructions.
Doing what kinds of things?
All sorts. Regulating hormones like growth hormone or sex hormones, metabolic health. GLP-1 is a peptide nerve function, even things like sexual desire.
Sounds powerful. Any cautions?
Big caution. They are not like vitamins you just take. They're potent biological modulators. You need an educated practitioner to guide use, dosing, and monitoring.
And maybe not use them continuously.
Right, especially things that stimulate growth hormone. Cycling might be better to mimic natural patterns. He also raised a specific concern about continuous use of BPC 157.
Aye, that one.
It promotes angiogenesis, new blood vessel growth. Great for healing, but theoretically you wouldn't want to potentially encourage blood supply to an unknown tumor. Needs careful consideration.
Makes sense. Okay, looking further into the future. Early disease detection, especially cancer. Are we getting better at that?
We are. Traditional screening like colonoscopies or mammograms often find cancer when it's already established. The exciting area is liquid biopsies.
Like the Gallery test.
Exactly. They look for tiny fragments of cancer DNA floating in your blood. They can potentially detect dozens of cancers super early, often before symptoms or imaging could find them, including cancers we don't currently screen for.
That sounds revolutionary. What about things like whole-body MRIs for early detection?
They exist, like the Prenuvo scan. There's debate about cost effectiveness and finding incidental things, but the potential is there, and costs will likely come down. The bigger trend is data-driven healthcare.
Meaning combining everything.
Yeah, integrating biomarkers, wearable data, genomics, imaging, health history, using AI and expert knowledge to create a really personalized picture of your health risks and status, like Lee Hood's Phenomenon project.
Using all that data to predict disease.
Exactly. Finding risks years earlier, like developing blood tests for Alzheimer's risk based on markers like PTAU217 or amyloid ratios.
Wow. Okay, so if you do find those early Alzheimer's markers, what then? Can anything actually be done? Traditional neurology can be a bit bleak on that front.
It can be, but Dr. Hyman highlighted researchers like Richard Isaacson and Dale Bridgeson who are taking very personalized, multi-pronged approaches.
And they're seeing results.
They're reporting cases where they've halted or even reversed cognitive decline. It involves tackling all the potential root causes for that individual.
So not just one cause.
Right. Alzheimer's is increasingly seen as type 3 diabetes. Insulin resistance in the brain is a big factor, but it's also linked to toxins, mold, Lyme disease, gut issues, nutrient deficiencies.
Like B vitamins.
Yeah, he mentioned cases reversing with B vitamin supplementation. So the treatment has to be multi-causal and multimodal, tailored to the person.
Fascinating. Okay, the last big topic, longevity and NAD. What's the deal with NAD?
NAD is a really vital coenzyme. Think of it as fuel for cellular processes, especially those involved in repair and longevity.
Like which pathways?
It helps activate key ones like sirtuins, AMPK. It's involved in mTOR and insulin signaling. These pathways regulate cellular repair, inflammation, energy production, basically, keeping cells healthy and resilient.
And how do we boost NAD levels?
Things like fasting, exercise, maybe caloric restriction can do it naturally. And then there's interftin supplements like NMN or NR, which are NAD precursors.
Does Dr. Hyman use them?
For Huberman.
He mentioned Huberman uses sublingual NMN and feels it gives him more energy, faster hair, and nail growth. And Dr. Hyman himself has used NAD infusions. So, multiple potential ways to support it. This has been a huge amount of information, really connecting the dots. What's the single most important takeaway for someone listening?
I think it's that your health isn't just a collection of separate parts or symptoms. It's all interconnected. And by looking for and addressing the root causes, using that functional medicine approach, you can make huge strides in how you feel and function. It puts you back in the driver's seat.
Yeah, it emphasizes being proactive and personalized.
Totally. Understanding your own biology through testing and realizing how much power you have through food choices and lifestyle. Those are your biggest levers.
Even though we know the modern environment makes it challenging sometimes.
Right. Navigating the food system takes effort, and systemic change is needed too. But individual choices still matter immensely.
So if someone wants to take just one actionable step after hearing all this, what could it be?
Maybe just pick one thing. Reflect on your diet. Where could you add one more serving of colorful vegetables today? Or swap one processed snack for whole fruit. Another idea. Look up a bioavailable form of magnesium like glycinate or malate and just read about it. Maybe discuss it with your doctor next time. Start small, but start exploring. Keep digging your own deep dive.
Great advice. Focus on one thing. Thank you. This has been incredibly valuable. And thank you, our listeners, for joining us on this deep dive. Hopefully, it's given you some powerful insights and maybe some motivation to take that next step on your own health journey.